Good mornings and welcome, everyone. Isn't such lovely weather today? And we're all here, we've made it, we're all seated, we're comfortable, we've had our coffee, hopefully, and we're here together to talk about and celebrate people living with diabetes today. So my name is Ashley, and I'll be your Master of Ceremonies for today's event. On behalf of Diabetes Victoria, welcome to the 2024 Kellion Victory Medal Award Ceremony, which honours the great achievement of living with diabetes for 50 years or more and encourages others to continue working for victory over diabetes. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we're meeting on today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture. We pay our respects to the elders past and present and to other Aboriginal people present today. So I've been honoured with the task of being your host today. I was diagnosed with diabetes when I was 19 years old, and through a lot of tough navigation of the healthcare system with a lot of support from friends, who I still call friends today, and family, I've made it here. And I'm now a researcher as well as a clinician. And so for me, the Kellion represents so much hope. It's hope for people living with diabetes to live a full and healthy life. It's hope for future research and impact to change the landscape of how we manage the condition and how we live better lives as well. And it's a testament and inspiration to everyone living with diabetes to celebrate for those who have been living with the condition 50 years or more. It's truly inspirational. So thank you for being here today and for celebrating this momentous occasion. We have a very full and exciting agenda for you all today, starting with a welcome from Diabetes Victoria CEO, Glenn Noonan. And then following Glenn, we'll commence our 50-year Kellion Victory Medal Ceremony presentation. We'll pause halfway through the 50-year medal ceremony and welcome our keynote speaker. And then the rest of the 50-year Kellion medals will then be presented. At about 11:15, 11:30, we'll see how we go with time. We'll break for about 20 minutes where a light morning tea will be served. Following the break, we'll gather again for a panel discussion hosted by Glenn with 3 very special guests. We'll see who they are later. For exciting conversation about a new diabetes service available in Victoria. We will then present the 60, 70 and the 75-year Kellion Victory Medal. We also have a little prize. So we're giving away 3 copies of this 4-ingredient cookbook that you guys have seen outside. It's packed with delicious and easy to make recipes developed in conjunction with our dietitians from Diabetes Victoria. So you can be rest assured that they are delicious and nutritious. That great ad for you. If you haven't already, be sure to add your name to the entry bar at the registration desk for your chance to win. If you don't want them, I'll take them home. That's fine. And we'll now for lucky winners after morning tea. So now the boring housekeeping stuff, but really important. Please turn on mobiles to silent. I'm sure you'll hear beeping here and there and everywhere. Just let someone know you've got beeping there. There are unisex bathrooms available to the doors on your right this way. And then left, and the bathrooms will be down the hall. There are very few bathrooms available, so maybe just stagger when you're going there, as opposed to everyone rushing to the bathrooms during the break time. So there might be a little bit of a line, so just be mindful of that. And in the likely event of an emergency, I'm sure someone will yell at us, and we'll just have to follow that someone, okay? There'll be NAB staff members, so don't worry. And if at any point during the event you feel like you're having a hypo, you're going low, please feel free to see the staff at the registration table, and they have hypo kits. Convenient. And you'll notice in front of you, there is a short evaluation card on your plate, so you don't miss it. So you have to fill it out before you eat. Not forcing you anything. So please take a moment to do complete that, because we want to hear your feedback on how we can make this event better for the future. On a final note, to allow Kellion medalists an accessible part to the front of the room to collect their awards, can I please ask that all bags and handbags are located under the tables to avoid tripping hazards. Don't see what I've done and just dump my bag on the floor. Please put them on the table. Thank you. And now, to officially kick things off, please join me in welcoming our CEO, Glenn Noonan, to the stage.
Well, good morning. I'd also like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we do meet today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. Pay my respects to elders past and present. And just a hugely warm welcome to all of you, and in particular our Kellion recipients. It's a real privilege to be able to host you all today and to be able to host this event. It's a really, really special event on the calendar. It's one that we look forward to every year. The opportunity to recognise and celebrate with all of you Kellion recipients in terms of your amazing achievements. As Ash said, many have travelled long distances to be here, whether that be by train or even plane, I understand, to be here. It's fantastic to have people from right across Victoria and the efforts that you've made to attend today. So thank you. I'd also like to thank Ash. It's great to have Ash as our MC. Ash has contributed and continues to contribute so much to the diabetes community, which we're all entirely grateful for in terms of your contribution. So thanks very much, Ash. Thanks to NAB as well, the amazing facilities that they've made available to us today to host this event. We're very grateful to NAB. Thanks very much to Richard Loveridge, our Diabetes Victoria Board President, for his role today. You'll see Richard up and down and presenting the awards a little later. Welcome also to other Diabetes Victoria members, Tony Howard, Dan Jefferson and Ed Stockdale. Welcome to the Diabetes Australia CEO, Justine Kane. Diabetes Australia manages the National Kelly Victory Medal Scheme, while Diabetes Victoria is the local agent and hosts for Victorian Kelly Victory Medal ceremony events. And a huge thanks to everyone at Diabetes Victoria for their amazing work in putting the event together. So today's event, and when I think about the event, what's it about? Well, it's a celebration. It's a celebration of you, the Kellion is here today, and your extraordinary efforts in managing this complex condition for so many decades. And of course, when you were first diagnosed with diabetes, the care and support was so different to what it is today. And sometimes it is hard to imagine that in terms of those differences. And I reflect on these differences when I think about my son and his diagnosis of type 1 diabetes. He was diagnosed at age 9 and has been living with type 1 now for 14 years. And he certainly has had a series of challenges. And that's with the latest technology and the latest diabetes care and management that we now have. And so I think about that in the sense of how different that is and that technology is, and what he's been able to avail himself to what it was like when you were all first diagnosed, whether that be 50 years or up to 75 years ago. When I think about that, I think that just makes your achievements just so significant. So your extraordinary efforts in managing the condition do come through so clearly in your personal stories, and these are captured in the booklet here, which is amazing to read those stories. And everyone does have their own personal story. I think that's amazing in terms of the personal journey that everyone has gone through living with diabetes. But as I reflect and I read through the stories, there are a few common themes, I think, that I'd just like to mention. The first one is about the team effort. Team effort in terms of we constantly hear from our Kellion medalists that managing diabetes has been a real team effort. And it's great to have the carers in the room here as your supporters. In fact, last year, medalist Lawrence Davis told us that he is eternally grateful for the support from his wife, Dawn, She educated me in my diabetes awareness and has saved me both physically and mentally. Another medalist, Karen Irwin, told us how grateful she was for her mum, who, without her devotion and care in her early years, she would not have survived 50 years with diabetes. Karen believes her mum deserves her medal as much as she does due to the physical, emotional and financial support over the last 50 years. There might be a few here in the room who feel the same way. Resilience and determination is another theme that we hear from Kellions, such as Thomas Berg, who told us he was determined to manage his diabetes without letting it affect his attitude to living life to the fullest, and he strongly believed he could achieve anything in his life and career without letting diabetes become an obstacle at all. And this determination and strength comes through with so many of you, and so many of you that I speak to hear that in terms of the absolute determination and strength. Thank you. And we also hear the theme and the importance of the improvements in diabetes management and technology over the decades that I mentioned. Past Kellion medalist Anna Munchie explains, I went from boiling glass syringes and big needles to now wearing an insulin pump, plus no testing of urine due to blood glucose monitors, and now having access to a continuous glucose monitoring. And the changes in technology that we've seen have really been truly remarkable. So I do sincerely thank all of you for your support of Diabetes Victoria. And I would like to say that as a token and a recognition of our appreciation, I'm pleased to announce that as today's Kellion medalists, you do join a very special group in receiving free lifetime membership to Diabetes Victoria. More information about that will be shared later today, so thank you. All right, shifting gears slightly, I do also want to take the opportunity to let you know that we've recently and very excitingly developed our new Diabetes Victoria strategy. And that strategy will guide us in the work we do towards our vision, a vision in which diabetes can do no harm. At the heart of it, the strategy is about enhancing our impact, reach and support for all Victorians impacted by diabetes. It's about recognising and calling out the significance of the condition and making it clear in terms of the changes that we need to positively change lives. The strategy, it's ambitious and bold. What I'd like to do is take a moment to play a video that we've recently put together, which encapsulates key parts of the strategy. Wow, thank you. And thanks to the team that put that video together. And there's a lot in the video. There's a lot in there in terms of the strategy, and that strategy, as I said, sets the course for our work into the future. One of the aspects is around enhancing diabetes care and the importance of collaboration across the health system to achieve that. And I will mention one of the initiatives that we're particularly pleased around is the establishment of the Victorian Virtual Emergency Department, the new diabetes service for that, which provides access to free urgent telehealth care delivered by diabetes specialists. So that is the topic of the panel that we'll come to a little bit later. This morning also you'll hear from Professor Tom Kay. Professor Tom Kay was recently awarded the 2024 Diabetes Victoria Outstanding Contribution Award. And we get... it's fair to say Tom is just such a deserving awardee and winner of that medal. We're so proud to be able to award that to Tom. Tom's also pretty modest. So I will sort of say it. He is one of the leading diabetes researchers, not only in Australia, but internationally. I think it's an absolute privilege to be able to hear from Tom this morning in terms of the latest work that's occurring in diabetes research and some of the amazing breakthroughs that are occurring. So thank you, Tom, for joining us today. So just finally, Diabetes Victoria, we are determined that diabetes advancements will become more rapid every year. We do hope that one day soon the current methods of diabetes management that we know of will actually seem very much outdated. Wouldn't that be amazing as what we think of good practice today becomes outdated into the future, as the bright future that we envision becomes a reality. That's what we want to achieve. And thank you everyone for your participation and contributions to the diabetes community. Thank you very much, and please enjoy the morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. It's so exciting to hear the new strategy that's coming out, particularly the focus around collaboration and partnership. We know we've heard so many times that diabetes is a team effort. And so having advocacy from Diabetes Victoria to the different levels of the system, the healthcare system, the government, that was really support us, particularly with, collaborating with clinicians and researchers and the community, even carers as well. I'm really excited to see where the future takes us, and just to see Diabetes Victoria and strength. And so now we will move on to the formal part of our ceremony, the fun part. Sorry, that was also pretty fun, but this is more fun. I'd love to invite Liana from Diabetes Victoria Future Leaders Program, and Nick Passios, a dedicated volunteer from Diabetes Camp Victoria. Pants are amazing. They will be sharing the profiles of our inspiring Kellion Award recipients. As they start to read each profile, we would love to invite the recipient and the nominated support person to come forward and receive their medal and certificate from Diabetes Victoria's board president, Richard Loveridge. So if they could just come up to the beautiful golden stand there, that'd be great. And I'll just hand it over to Liana and Nick.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name's Liana, and I'm honored to be one of the profile readers this morning. So let's get started with the first award. Diagnosed after a routine visit to the GP, Karen Albright initially struggled with many aspects of type 1 diabetes, especially as she was basically nerve to manage her diabetes on her own. Karen battled through many years without adequate support, handling oral injections and urine tests, and attending hospital appointments on her own, often waiting for hours to be seen. She felt angry, resentful, and isolated, left to just get on with it. But reading a book written by an American diabetes educator, Martha Funnell, entitled The Little Book of Diabetes You Need to Read, was a major life changer and released Karen from years of pain, anger, and resentment. She is grateful for the support of her partner of 31 years and her 2 daughters. She developed diabetic retinopathy in 1984 and became legally blind. With assistance from the Royal Victorian Institute for the Blind, she attained a Bachelor of Social Work and has worked in the public mental health sector for over 30 years. She says receiving a Kellion Victory Medal is an acknowledgement of the adversities she had to overcome. Thank you and congratulations, Karen.
While studying medicine at Melbourne University, a 19-year-old Helen Fleming was surprised when her fellow med students tested each other's urine and she found hers was positive for glucose. The instructors running the class told her to ignore it, but her mother took her to see a GP who confirmed the diagnosis of type 1 diabetes. Helen learned to manage her diabetes whilst completing her medicine degree, which was difficult to juggle at the time. She credits her mother, Gwenda, as her most important supporter over the years. She says the biggest challenge she has faced has been dealing with hypoglycemia unawareness. Helen has been using an insulin pump and CGM sensors for almost 2 decades. She lists her best achievements as playing sport and bushwalking, traveling extensively to places like Kathmandu within the first year after her diagnosis, and completing her medicine degree with specializations in pathology. She says she is proud to reach 50 years living with diabetes and that the milestone is a tribute to what her mother did to help. Congratulations, Helen.
Tom Fletcher was misdiagnosed with type 2 diabetes when he presented with all the familiar symptoms at age 30. He lost a lot of weight and experienced an excessive thirst, while the tablets he was prescribed were of no help. He finally connected with Dr. Skip Martin, who informed him he really had type 1 diabetes. Tom had married his wife Katie a few years before his diagnosis, and she has been his greatest support over the years, along with his 3 children. He describes Katie as a special, supportive wife who has always supported him through all the ups and downs. He says one of his proudest achievements was to continue working as a concrete pool builder and landscaper until he was 70 years old. And since retirement, he enjoys restoring old cars with his grandson. His children and grandchildren all live less than 15 minutes away, so he sees his family often. Tom says he is proud to reach the 50-year milestone, which gives him the satisfaction of being able to live a full life with diabetes. Congratulations, Tom.
Susan Freeman remembers feeling unwell after school one day, having already lost weight, being very thirsty and urinating a lot. She was taken to hospital and went into a coma with blood sugars at 0.35 millimeters, after which she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Susan is grateful for how her parents handled her diagnosis at the time, always making sure that she was okay. The support Susan has received from doctors over the years has been helpful, including Dr. Doreen Hyder, who first diagnosed her at Batlow District Hospital, and her physician, Dr. Christian Holmes, who she says has always been stern but supportive with their glucose management. She's also grateful for the evolution of technology over the past 50 years and says disposable needles and blood testing machines have made control much easier. Susan married and had 2 children and now has a grandson. She is thankful to her friends and families for encouraging her and providing a shoulder to lean on when she needed, and considers surviving so long with diabetes as one of her greatest achievements. Congratulations, Susan.
Born and raised in Auckland, New Zealand, David has lived with diabetes for 50 years, having been diagnosed at the age of just 2. As such, a life with diabetes is all he's ever known, and his philosophy has always been to just get on with it and do whatever he's needed to do. He says living with diabetes isn't something he ever thought about too much and never let his condition define him. David attended some diabetes camp in New Zealand where he was a teenager and met others living with type 1 for the first time, while he kept active in his youth, playing cricket and rugby. He has lived in Melbourne since 1999 and works as a cabinet maker. What he finds most challenging is when his blood glucose level drops during the night, but overall he feels he has found the right balance and manages quite well. When he's not building kitchens, David enjoys playing golf, fishing on the Mornington Peninsula, and going to the pub. Congratulations, David.
Therese Hurry and her family knew something was amiss when at age 10 she was unable to get up on her beanbag chair. She was quickly admitted to a hospital where she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. The early days of Therese's diagnosis involved urine testing, boiling of glass syringes, and measuring food in portions. She received great support from her parents and family, particularly from her mother, who was a nurse and able to help with the insulin and dietary regime. These days, Therese's husband Shane is her greatest support, along with her 2 sons, Brett and Dylan. She has travelled extensively and has kept active through basketball, netball, walking, and running half and full marathons. She has completed several Run for the Kids, 10-kilometre runs to raise money for the Royal Children's Hospital. Therese is currently part of the St Vincent's Hospital islet transplant program in the hope of becoming an insulin independent. Therese's message to others living with diabetes is simple. If you can work hard, look after yourself, and embrace it all you can live a wonderful life. Congratulations, Therese.
Tanveen Mohammed was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes at the age of 32. This left Agni and his family worried, but he was assured by an endocrinologist that diabetes could be managed with some lifestyle changes, regular physical activity like walking, avoiding certain food, and completely removing sugar from his diet. These days, the knowledge around the management of diabetes has improved significantly since Amin was first diagnosed, and he is particularly pleased that knowledge about the GI factor and low GI food has allowed him to better control and manage his food intake. Amin has received a wonderful support over the years from his various endocrinologists and GPs, as well as his wife, Kanins, who he says is an expert in managing diabetes and has made life easy and fruitful for him. Amin is proud to be a responsible family member and has helped to raise 2 sons. He says receiving the Kellion Award is a testament to the discipline he has shown in managing his diabetes over the past 50 years. Congratulations, Amin.
Great. Thank you, Rihanna and Nick, for reading these amazing stories and to everyone for celebrating those achievements. Now, I've lost our tape. Sorry. We're going to pause for a second to turn our focus onto some amazing research featuring the amazing Professor Tom Kate. So I was just a little bit distracted because I was trying to figure out what the acronym stood for, which I now have. So Professor Thomas Kate is a true expert in the diabetes research field, and I have been I've had the great privilege to be part of ATIC, which is the Australasian Type 1 Diabetes Immunotherapy Collaborative as well. So it's basically consumers coming together to support this research in multiple different directions and ways. And so Tom was the part and quite influential in this research body of work together with John Wentworth as well. So it's such an honor to have Tom here today to speak about his research, the latest on diabetes research and future direction. As you heard before, he was the 2024 Diabetes Victoria Outstanding Contribution Award that was awarded 4 weeks ago. So huge congratulations to Tom, and please join me in welcoming Professor Thomas Kate to speak.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. Thanks, Ashley, for the introduction. Thanks, Glenn, for inviting me. What I thought I'd do today is tell you a little bit about my recent trip, show you a bit like a slide map or something. I'll try and give you a bit of tell you what I've been up to lately. I've just come back from 2.5 weeks away, and I can tell you a little bit about the conferences I went to and so on that will give you a bit of an overview of where the field that I work in, type 1 diabetes, is headed. Now, you've been all involved in type 1 diabetes for 50 or 60 or 75 years. I guess I've been involved in type 1 diabetes for less time than that, for about 40 years. I was an endocrine resident. I was an endocrine resident in 1982 and endocrinology registrar at the Royal Melbourne in 1985. So I've been in the field for about 40 years. I guess I cut my teeth working under the supervision of Skip Martin, who's already had a mention today, and some of you might remember Skip, who was a bit of a character, to say the least. And it's the team that he led, including people like Alison Van Curvis and Peter Coleman. Some of you might remember the diabetes educator at the RMH at the time, Sue Moore, and so on. And they're all very, very highly committed people. And then I worked closely subsequently in my career with Len Harrison and with Richard Larkin. So all of those people have been important mentors. Now, 50 is an important time for type 1 diabetes because 50 years ago, in 1974, type 1 diabetes was first really recognized to be an autoimmune disease because of the work of Franco Battazzo, an Italian physician working in London with his mentor supervisor, Deborah Gognac. And they discovered islet cell antibodies, which are the main test that's been used over many years and various elaborations of that to determine that diabetes is an autoimmune disease. And what they showed was that people with type 1 diabetes had antibodies circulating in the blood which could recognize insulin-producing cells in normal human pancreas. I probably want to emphasize that I think we heard in the video and so on about the changes in diabetes management over the period of time, go back 50 or 60 years. There have been tremendous changes in diabetes management. There have also actually been tremendous changes in understanding how type 1 diabetes comes about over that time, and especially digging into this idea of it as a autoimmune problem. That is a condition in which the body mistakenly, the immune system of the body mistakenly recognizes and destroys the insulin-producing cells in the pancreas. Now, knowledge certainly does change. In fact, when I first, I think, for a lecture about type 1 diabetes, probably when I was a fourth year medical student in 1977, in fact, in 1974, 50 years ago, it was my first year at uni. In 77, I was a clinical medical student, and Richard Larkin has gave us a talk on type 1 diabetes. And for those of you who've ever had anything to do with Richard, he's the world's greatest authority on medicine, on everything. He's completely incredible expert on medicine in general, but diabetes in particular. And in that talk in 1977, he really barely touched on the idea of diabetes as an autoimmune disease. And he told us all sorts of things that turned out subsequently not to be true. And that's was a bit alarming for me as someone growing up with Richard as my role model. And possibly it's a very important message that things change. You know, one of the things he told us about was that the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes was that type 1 diabetes came on suddenly and immediately, and it was something that unfolded over a very short period of time, whereas type 2 diabetes is something unfolded over a long period of time. And that turned out to be untrue when people were able to use oral antibodies to show that people with type 1 diabetes had been sort of brewing the condition for many years, months to years before they actually come along clinical presentation. And that knowledge now has been used to create this new framework of how type 1 diabetes is understood. So now we refer to stages of type 1 diabetes, with stage 3 type 1 diabetes being the time at which the clinical diagnosis has traditionally been made, when people go to the doctor with symptoms and high blood glucose. And stage 1 and stage 2 are now parts of what's called pre-symptomatic type 1 diabetes, when the condition is present and insulin producing cells are being destroyed, but there are still sufficient data to control blood glucose, and there's no clinical symptoms at that time. But it's been important to describe those stages, stage 1 and stage 2, pre-symptomatic diabetes, because it leads you into a whole world of trying to intervene in the disease process, the condition, how the condition unfolds. So you can look for people in the community using this test called islet antibodies to find people who are going to develop stage 3 or clinical type 1 diabetes in the future. Now, I'd say that the main premise of the work that I currently am involved in is the idea that type 1 diabetes is better managed, is easier to handle when you are making your own insulin. That if you're entirely dependent on insulin, exogenous, what we call exogenous insulin given by injections or by a pump, then that's a much harder equation than if you are making your own insulin. So the focus of what I'm involved in is trying to either preserve the insulin-producing cells, if they're still present, in a period of pre-symptomatic diabetes, or right at the time of diagnosis when there are still some insulin-producing cells left, or putting back insulin-producing cells later on. Now, quite often I come across people who will say, well, I don't know, is that really worth doing? Type 1 diabetes, the technologies to manage type 1 diabetes, as we've heard this morning, have improved tremendously. In fact, when I was a resident, it was just at the time that, in the very early 80s, just at the time that testing was changing over from urine testing to blood glucose testing with meters. And I have to say that Skip, my boss at the time, was pretty skeptical about the introduction of blood glucose testing. It took him a while to accept that it was a better way of doing things. But as we know, that made a huge difference, and increasingly sophisticated insulins and the ways of delivering them have been incredible step forward, as have closed loop systems and so on. But I think there's still a case to be made that, there's still plenty of evidence that making your own insulin is a good determinant of prevention of complications in the future. Quite a lot of data about that. And as well as that, the burden of diabetes clearly is lessened. We've heard a bit today about complications, retinopathy, I think, and we've heard quite a lot actually in the descriptions about hypoglycemia and particularly hypoglycemia unawareness. And these are things that are very much features of established diabetes without any endogenous, without making insulin yourself. Now, an interesting thing that's come to light in recent years is that some people make a bit of insulin throughout the course of their type 1 diabetes. Not everyone is completely devoid of making insulin. And it turns out that the people who continue to make some insulin have a better clinical outcome than those that don't. And, you might think of yourselves, of course, as survivors, long-term survivors of diabetes, actually people in the room here who are making some of their own insulin themselves naturally. And the goal of what we're trying to do is to mean that everyone can continue to make insulin, and perhaps enough even to become insulin independent. Though that's a sort of the ultimate goal. But even making some of your own insulin is better than having none at all. We also heard referred to this morning that back in the day, there were incredibly ambitious predictions about how long it would take to cure type 1 diabetes. The magic term 5 years used to come up a lot. And I was looking perhaps in the sort of generation just beyond that, where we sort of recognize that these statements were unlikely to turn out to be true because they already had turned out not to be true. And so we understand the skepticism about that, but I think we're now entering a special moment where it is possible that very significant progress is going to be made. And I'll tell you, I've been on a real roller coaster over the last couple of years, very deeply involved in some of these things, with many highs to do with some results that I'll talk about, but some lows too. And in particular, one of the lows has been that my colleague, Kellion Thomas, I worked on type 1 diabetes for a long time, for 30 years, passed away recently. And that's been so that's given him clearly some lows as well as some highs. So I just want to acknowledge the work she's done. Now, what did I do on this trip? I went to 3 places mainly. I went to Indianapolis, which some of you will know is the home of Eli Lilly, which is a diabetes company that's been a US diabetes company, now the biggest drug company in the world by market capitalization, in part because of their inventions of drugs to treat obesity and type 2 diabetes. But they've been in the diabetes game for a long time. Eli Lilly himself was a small-town pharmacist in Indianapolis who was the first licensee for producing insulin in the US, and built a huge company on the back of producing insulin. I went there because they Lilly also make a drug called baricitinib, which we used in a clinical study which we published about 12 months ago, that showed in people with new onset type 1 diabetes, aged from 10 to 30 years of age, who took this drug for a 12-month period, that they retained the insulin production they had at diagnosis, whereas in the people who were treated with the placebo tablet, the dummy tablet, their insulin production dropped away. I was visiting Lilly to meet with my colleagues there, who I know very well, to talk to them about the next stages in that story, and the next stage is to try and get that drug into clinical practice so that it can be prescribed widely. Even though you generate evidence that something works, you still have to, there are a whole lot of other hurdles to jump, particularly the hurdle of convincing the Food and Drug Administration in the US, which is the world's dominant regulator of medicines, that diabetes is an appropriate condition to use this drug, and it's already used to treat other autoimmune diseases. So the idea here is to treat type 1 diabetes as an autoimmune disease as well as an insulin deficiency problem. I can't tell you too much about what we talk about there, except we're hopeful that there will be Lily will take up the cause and continue that work. The next place I stopped was Boston, where I went to a conference on stem cell derived insulin producing cells, stem cell derived islets, we would call them, and this is a meeting about the sort of rapidly advancing technology of using stem cells that can be turned in any kind of cell in the body, to turn those cells into insulin producing cells and to use them to replace insulin production in diabetes. And this technology is now poised to replace islet transplantation, which we've heard a bit about before, and to be a way that people with established diabetes can start making their own insulin again. An American pharmaceutical company called Vertex has taken up the challenge of doing that, and they've made incredible progress over the last few years. They using the technology of a Harvard University stem cell researcher, Doug Melton. He sold his company and his technology to Vertex, and Vertex are now doing clinical trials that use these cells in 20 to 30 people around the world, with fantastic results, with most of those people becoming free of the need for insulin treatment. And that technology is now going to what's called phase 3 trials, which are trials leading to approval, leading to consideration by the FDA for approval of that technology. In the past, technologies like islet transplantation have been in the hands of academics primarily, the sort of people who do transplants of various sorts, other kidney transplants and other transplants. There's a real sense that the technology being in the hands of a big company is going to make a big difference to the implementation of these therapies. Trials have been done in many countries around the world, not in Australia at this time, for various reasons. But this technology will come here, and it looks like in coming years this technology will be licensed. Now, at this time, the transplants that are done with these cells still require immunosuppression, and that means the transplants will be used in certain specialised conditions where there are people who have major problems such as hypoglycemia, unawareness, or kidney failure. It will require companies to get rid of the need, researchers to get rid of the need for immunosuppression, for these treatments to become much more broadly applicable. And I think the vision is, and a lot of people are working on that, including our group, and the vision for the future is that perhaps when you're diagnosed with diabetes, you won't be treated with insulin, you'll get a stem cell transplant. And that's still a long way off because it will require this, the ability to not require immunosuppression, for example, require a lot of safety data. But it's definitely something that now appears to be feasible because these stem cell islets, derived islets, provide an unlimited source of insulin-producing cells. So when you think about the fact that you've had diabetes for 60 to 75 years, in the future, people like Glenn's sons had diabetes for a mere 14 years. With the long life they have in front of them, these technologies could well come online in that time. No promises about the exact time frame, but it could be. Someone said to me, actually, a senior figure in the chief scientific officer of the JDRF said to me, he thought that these cells should be licensed for use in 3 or 4 years by the FDA. That's a very short time frame, and that would be purely for these specialised indications. Now, the third stop on my trip was in Bruges in northern Belgium, which is a sort of pretty tourist town. There's a movie about being in Bruges about the fact that it's a boring place, or maybe it's not a boring place. It's mainly a sort of very pretty medieval town. And I went there for a meeting of the Immunology of Diabetes Society, which is a special kind of little small group of people. I would say it's a bubble or an echo chamber of people who've believed in these technologies and have been working on them like I have for 30 or 40 years. There are people that I've known since the 1980s and people from all around the world, and of course younger people as well. And these are people who are working on the idea that you can prevent or cure type 1 diabetes using therapies aimed at the immune system. And There's a lot of progress there too, using drugs like the one we use, which we're calling disease-modifying therapies, DMTs, if you like, disease-modifying therapies, because that's the term that rheumatologists and dermatologists and gastroenterologists use when these kind of drugs are applied to the disease that they work, the disease they work on, like inflammatory bowel disease or psoriasis or rheumatoid arthritis. You know, in a different world, you can imagine that type 1 diabetes might have wound up in some specialty where autoimmune diseases were treated as a group of conditions rather than endocrinology, whereas in some way they're a little bit of a misfit because in the end, endocrinology is really about metabolism and hormones and so on, and this really is an abnormality of the immune system. And that's the way people are thinking about treating type 1 diabetes in the future. And you'll be conscious that quite often people with type 1 diabetes but family members with other autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid or inflammatory bowel disease, thyroid disease, etc. Now, one of the big things that's happening there is that these drugs are mainly tested in the first instance in stage 3 diabetes at diagnosis, like as we did. And that's because it's much easier to find people at stage 3 when they come along, present to the doctor with diabetes. But probably the real action in the future is going to be in stage 2 and stage 1, in pre-symptomatic diabetes, when people have still got enough insulin-producing cells to keep themselves insulin independent, if they could hang on to that insulin producing cell mass. And so the idea of preventing the progression of type 1 diabetes to stage 3 diabetes is what we're all focused on. And the first drug to do that was licensed, as many of you will probably know, a drug called teplizumab, licensed in the United States for stage 2 diabetes, and it delays the onset of stage 3 diabetes by about 3 years. And that's now been used in about 400 people in the United States and will rapidly spread to Europe and Australia as Sanofi, who now own the drug, roll it out worldwide. Finding people in stage 1 and stage 2 diabetes involves screening for autoantibodies particularly, but also for genetic risk in some cases. That's not really my topic. It's something John Wentworth at the Royal Melbourne, for example, is very involved in. And that's happening all around the world, both for first-degree relatives, children in particular, but also siblings of people with type 1 diabetes. And but it's also happening at a population-based level. So in Bavaria, Germany, a pioneer of this technology has rolled a screening program out for all children in that region in Germany. And amazingly, about a year ago, the Italian Parliament passed a law that says all children should be tested for type 1 diabetes and celiac disease. And the Italian government is now, my colleagues in Italy are now grappling with the enormous task of rolling this out. This is a federal law in Italy, whereas Italian healthcare is organised in regions, in Lombardy and Tuscany and Abruzzo, etc. So somehow the healthcare system has got to respond to this introduction of this law. But similar things are happening around the world, and increasingly trials are being done that could prevent diabetes. And interestingly, hospitals like the Royal Children's have now set up clinics that are dealing with monitoring people who have autoantibodies and are trying to prevent them eventually developing type 1 diabetes. So you can imagine in a future that might be distant, but might not be too distant, that diabetes clinic at the Royal Children's might not be about people who do have type 1 diabetes, but about people who are at risk of developing type 1 diabetes, but because of various interventions are prevented from getting type 1 diabetes, which would be a massive change in how type 1 diabetes is thought about, workforce requirements, how it operates in the community. So I think that's most of what I was going to tell you about. I'm happy to answer questions at morning tea. This is something that as I actually mentioned we're sort of right in the center of this thing called HIT, the Australian Type 1 Diabetes Certain Collaborative is involved in clinical trials, involved in setting up screening and so on. That's a nationwide group of people, many, or most of them are actually pediatricians at this stage, but also adult endocrinologists involved in trying to keep up to date with this. Now, you might well say, some of my colleagues in the room might say, you're living in a bubble. We don't believe any of this. But the time will tell, and I think we're a very special moment in the history of understanding and managing type 1 diabetes, where some of these things might well come true in coming years. Thank you very much. I'm sure I talked too long, but don't do that.
Amazing. Can you imagine a world where type 1 diabetes diagnosis is not this traumatic thing where you go into hospital at the brink of death? Can you imagine what parents and families would have to go through at that stage where it's just a gradual introduction to diabetes? It's such a game changer, and I think the research that Tom and his team are doing is massive. It's huge. So congratulations, Tom, and thank you so much again for sharing your insights from your lovely underworld trip. And I'm happy to have Sydney. Really great show, movie, by the way. Highly recommend. And the Banshee of Inisherin as well is quite an interesting one to follow. So now, to continue on with the formalities, I'm going to hand you back to Liana and Nick to introduce you to the remainder of our 50-year medalists. So just being mindful as well that, morning tea is coming up. So if you do need to rest the bathroom, please do so at any stage. You don't have to put your hand up to ask. It's okay. We will let you go. We'll forgive you. And an upset will have morning tea. Thank you.
Aileen Nelson's earliest memory of being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes is undertaking 5 blood tests over the course of 2 hours at Hamilton Base Hospital in September 1974. From what Aileen was told at the time, it was lucky she made it to the hospital when she did, as her sugar levels were so high that she could have got into a coma. Despite a lack of diabetes education being available at the time, Aileen took her situation into her stride and just got on with her life. She continually worked and achieved positions of management, travelled extensively, played sport into her 40s, and did her best to stay fit and healthy. These days, she receives excellent support from her diabetes health professionals, including her diabetes educators, dietitians, podiatrists, and her endocrinologist, Professor Mark Kotowitz and Dr. Richard Dargaville. Throughout the years, Aileen has remained happily manual in her diabetes management. Reaching a significant milestone is a source of pride for Aileen and shows how she has defied the initial expectations from when she was diagnosed. Congratulations, Aileen.
Cynthia Nelson remembers experiencing significant weight loss that her doctor put down to stress. Unconvinced by this diagnosis, she visited a medical research organization, the Shepherd Foundation, who sent her to the hospital where she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Initially, the prognosis was grim and she was told she had 2 weeks to live. Thankfully, the diagnosis came before it was too late. Management in the early days involved irregular injections of beef insulin, urine testing, and boiling syringes. She is grateful for the evolution in technology like insulin pens and CGM devices, as well as the greater range of food options now available to her. Cynthia has received great support over the years from many people, including her husband Frank, who built Cynthia her own blood machine in 1981. Cynthia and Frank have 3 daughters and have spent many enjoyable years together, including some wonderful overseas traveling on cruise ships. She says that receiving her 50-year Kellion medal is a reward for living with a disease that takes over your entire life, and her hard work in managing the condition for so long. Congratulations, Cynthia.
When Andrew Scott was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 1974, he had heard of diabetes but didn't really know anything about it or exactly what it was. He recalls that it took several years to understand the condition and control his body. Andrew's mother was his biggest source of support initially, taking great care of him and doing everything she could to keep his blood glucose levels in check. He met his now wife Carol in 1984, who has continued to support him through every step of his diabetes management. Andrew describes Carol as an amazing wife to whom he owes an incredible amount for all she has done over more than 37 years of marriage. Andrew started an apprenticeship as a motor mechanic in 1978 and eventually became an automotive trade teacher in 1986, a role he continues to fulfill to this day. He feels that reaching 50 years living with diabetes is an enormous achievement and a reward for the hard work that he has done to keep as fit and healthy as possible. Congratulations, Andrew.
The diagnosis of type 1 diabetes came as a shock to Keith Stone when he received the news in 1974. Having recently married with 2 children under 3 and trying to develop his career in golf cart management, Keith's diagnosis left him feeling nervous about its impact on his life. Keith recalls his diabetes was first managed with a strict diet and a lot of discipline, and he had to overcome a severe fear of needles to be able to administer his own injections. Through it all, Keith's number one source of support has been his wife, Deanna, who he says has been instrumental in keeping him on the right track. Ensuring not to let his diabetes define his life, Keith continued in his professional development and had a very successful career while continuing to keep active in sports and remaining involved in many family activities. He particularly enjoys spending time with his grandchildren. Keith is proud to receive his 50-year Kellion medal, describing it as a recognition for managing the condition so well for so long. Congratulations, Keith.
When Wendy Vogel-Polo was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 1974, she had been losing weight, constantly urinating, and had a wound that would not heal. She recalls her doctor at the time said it was a toss-up between kidney disease, leukemia, and diabetes with a better result. The early days of her diagnosis were challenging, both for herself and her family, and she admits she was not always compliant, refusing to take her insulin, but not telling anyone about it, and ending up in hospital on multiple occasions. Wendy credits her mother Beverly as her best supporter, who she says she worried as a teenager. She recalls that every Easter her sisters would receive chocolate eggs while her present was always different, but her sisters would always slip her a bit of chocolate. Receiving the Kellion Victory Medal feels to Wendy like an acknowledgement of all the ups and downs that people living with diabetes go through, and she's grateful that she has been able to reach 50 years without any extra complications. Congratulations, Wendy.
Shortly after giving birth to her daughter in 1974, Lynn Willard received a diagnosis of type 1 diabetes. It was a lot to handle while working full-time and looking after a 3-month-old, so Lynn had to stick rigidly to all the rules she had been given to manage her diabetes. Over the past 50 years, apart from seeing great advances in technology, Lynn has seen growth in the level of education about the condition. She felt that the GPs she saw in the early days were not very knowledgeable or helpful and wanted to manage by herself. Access to endocrinologists and diabetes educators in the ensuing years had been of great benefit, as was attending an OZAC-DAFNA course about 20 years ago. Lynn has traveled extensively and lived in many different parts of Australia and the world, while holding down some very demanding jobs. Since retiring, she has become very active in her community, being involved with several community groups on the Mornington Peninsula. She says her best achievement is living life to the fullest and not letting diabetes stop her. Congratulations, Lynn.
Marianne Wright was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes as a 14-year-old and recalls feeling lethargic, losing weight rapidly, and having an excessive thirst. She was in a very bad state at the time, and the doctor told her that she was lucky she came to see him when she did, as he doubted she would have lasted another day. Urine testing and injections with fast syringes were part of Marianne's diabetes management in the early years, but she found those methods inadequate. Instead, she used a strategy of holding out her hand, and if her fingers were trembling, she knew her levels were getting low. Marianne credits her partner Adrian for being extremely supportive and attending any diabetes meeting or lectures with her. Her life has included working as a secondary school teacher for 32 years, being an accounts manager for a tourism company, and has been filled with activities like dancing, walking, skydiving, and learning to fly. She appreciates how far she has come over the past 50 years and says she takes great pride in receiving a Kellion Victory Medal. Congratulations, Marianne.
I didn't miss my cue to start. I think I'm getting better at this speak flu. Go me. Thank you, Rihanna and Nick, for another big round of applause to our 50-year Harry Medal winner. Thank you for hanging out for the thing that works. I just love it when doctors can give you the same Google result. You know, if you go to them with something small, you can either be something nothing, or it could be cancer, it could be death. So, gotta love the doctors and what they interpret things. So, I'm sure you guys have had enough of sitting on your bums now, and it's time to maybe stretch those legs and those arms and maybe, have a bit of snack. So, as morning tea is being served, please use this opportunity to go have a stretch of your legs, line up at the bathroom. I'm sure the line's already there. But please do be safe while you're doing that. And we will be back shortly for the second half of the ceremony. Thank you.